Welcome to this special series of Inspired By. Join me as I meet local identities.
I think the other one that hugely affected me was playing Helen Reddy in I'm Woman.
That's changing people's lives is an honour.
Including young people who have taken that leap and who are now following their dreams. How was it meeting Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple? Did that trigger some of that stand-up comedy?
You've investigated.
So then I had to somehow not completely freak out about the fact that the movie was going to fall over.
Oh, wow.
Maurice Sendak, Roald Dahl?
Oh, that is amazing.
That point in time, you have to go for it and give it 100%.
I sincerely hope that this helps you in getting you underway in following your dream. Becc Bates, Director of Creative Industries, Department for Innovation and Skills. Thank you very much for having me here today at St Paul's Creative Centre, right here in Adelaide, the City of Music. My mission is to help encourage young people to follow their dreams regardless of their circumstances. In doing our research, we were amazed at how vast your area of responsibility as Director of Creative Industries is, Becc.
Thank you for coming here to St Paul's and for taking time with me today.
What did you dream to become when you were around my age?
Because I had a little brother when I was around your age, we used to put on little shows in our house, like magic shows, and I'd make my brother do tricks and stuff, and then I'd invite all the kids in the street to come and see the show, and I'd charge them 2 cents at the door. So I used to I was doing these events and managing my brother as if he was an artist. So it's kind of funny if I think back, that's the stuff I used to do as a kid. I loved the theatre and I loved the thought of, without knowing it was business, I think I was kind of intuitively doing it. I remember I used to want to be a makeup artist for like film, and we had a family friend who was involved in the screen industry, and so I was always really fascinated by it. And I remember in drama in primary school we used to play with putty, and I remember breaking a chicken bone and kind of using this putty on my arm and putting a chicken bone in and showing my teacher what I thought looked great, and he said, "Oh, that looks fantastic," and he held my arm up and ran out of the drama suite over to the library, and the poor ladies in the library thought it was real and got really scared. But that was kind of funny after, not at the time, but after. So I used to want to be a makeup artist.
When did you realise your passion for the arts and entertainment?
Well, I was kind of having fun with it when I was your age, and I suppose it wasn't actually until a little later in life that I was continuously drawn to it. For a little while, for some reason, I don't know why, I really wanted to be a coroner, which has nothing to do with it, I know. But it came from that makeup artistry, and I got interested in bodies and bits and what we look like under our skin. I like that saying, all roads lead to Rome, because I think when you get close to Rome, whatever Rome is for you, you can, if you refer back to all of the things that you've done in your life, before you got there, you kind of think, wow, could I have done what I'm doing now if I hadn't have done that back there, or if I hadn't have taken that detour and turned left there instead of right, you know? And so it's those decisions that you make through your life, sometimes by your experiences, the choices you make, or choices sometimes made for you, but it's how you react to those choices and take the opportunities. So the kind of shows we used to put on when we were kids in the lounge room, the most fun ones were the ones where we'd hang up a bed sheet, a white bed sheet, and we'd put a lamp behind, and we'd do like shadow shows.
Oh.
So then the audience at the front of the sheet could just see the shadows, so you could like pretend you were doing an operation and pulling things out of bodies, you know. So I'd make my brother lay on a table, and then I'd put like Panda Bear there behind and pull it and pretend I was pulling out. So they were kind of fun because they made everybody laugh a lot.
The household you grew up in, would you class it as in being creative or entrepreneurial?
I think my first response to that would be entrepreneurial, because I grew up with my dad who owned a business, and so I watched my dad go to work during the day, and he'd come home and be preparing his work for the next day, but he'd also be in his office. And I remember I spent a lot of time in my dad's shed and in his office with him. So I kind of began to understand what it meant to have that drive to own and run and grow a business. And so that you just kind of learn things by being around people and watching and talking and asking questions. So I think entrepreneurial is my first reaction, but my mum is an artist, I should say. So I spend a lot of time, obviously, with my mum too, and around art. So I had that blend. I had that blend of creativity and business and entrepreneurialism. I feel very lucky, actually.
You know how your mum was an artist? Did you ever used to do art when you were little, or?
I did. I tried. I was never very good at painting. I was okay. You see and you learn about art, but you also take it for granted. Well, I did, because it was just around me all the time. And so I never really understood the value of art because it was just a part of my life.
What kind of things did you have going on in high school?
High school is, I think, a really interesting time. For me personally, I found primary school quite challenging, but going back to what you find as challenging also builds your character, and then it builds your sort of set of core values that carry you through life.
What were the outstanding hardships you had to overcome along the way?
Life throws you a myriad of curveballs all the time. A very dear friend of mine once said, it's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with it. And I think that that's really a clever saying, because I think everybody gets challenges in their life, you know. For me, I had challenges as a kid, you know, my parents split up, I had 4 brothers all of a sudden, changed schools quite a few times, but it's how you deal with that, you know, and what you learn from that, and then you take that into the next part of your life.
In your journey, how important have mentors been along the way?
I can't put enough value on mentors. I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be sitting here now if it wasn't for the mentors in my life. They mean a lot to me. I had a mentor in my second big job in my life, and he was the boss, and I was the junior girl when I started there, but I was interested and I wanted to learn. Good mentors are people that can see your potential even if you can't. One thing about a good mentor is somebody that has belief in your ability as well, and so they might push you or present you with challenges. And I remember at the time, you know, my second mentor, he made me, or asked me, he was my boss, so he kind of did make me actually, make a presentation at a board meeting. And there were all really established businessmen around the table at this meeting, and I had to make a financial presentation. And I think I was like 20 or something, and I was really nervous and didn't feel comfortable, and I was scared they'd ask me questions that I couldn't answer, and I felt like I needed to know everything, which is another lesson actually. But I asked him to do it for me, and he said, no, you must do this, it's a learning opportunity. And I remember at the time feeling so scared, like really nervous, but I did it, and I hated it at the time. It was awful. But after I'd done it, even though I still wasn't happy for a little while, you know, some time passing, I realised that actually builds your strength and your character.
In 2012, you were asked by the Director of Arts SA to undertake a review of the way in which the state government was supporting the music sector here in South Australia. What was the result of that review?
That was a pivotal point for me personally. So I'd come from managing artists and having a music business. So I'd been working in the local music industry for quite a few years, at the point that I'd then been working part-time in Arts SA when the director at the time asked me to consider what that might look like if the government supported the music industry in a different way. And that feels like what was then the beginning of a really exciting journey. I value the ability to have a foot in each section of creativity and artists and understanding artists, but also the business side. So what I felt I could do working in an arts office is talk to artists and business people and work out if the way that the government was supporting the industry for growth was the best that we could do. And so I went out and spoke to lots and lots of people, locally, nationally, and even internationally at that point. And I did it in-house. We didn't pay a big consultant to do it. We put a recommendation to my director and to the minister at the time. And at the same time as that happened, it was like a whole series of other things happened at the same time. So Arts SA had asked me to consider that, which I did. But then also other parts of government, they had a program at that time, which used to be called a Thinker in Residence program. So they had an international person come into town and look at the South Australian music industry from an outsider's perspective. And so they did their own report on what was happening at this. So I'd finished my report that was in there, and then we sort of decided, let's sit on that and see what happens here and bring the two together. And so, long story short, but there were lots of people working in government and in industry at the time that had a real interest and could see an opportunity here. And it's like all roads lead to Rome. Sometimes the planets align and certain people are in certain roles at the same time that can make things happen really quickly. And that just happened to be one of those times. And so we then set about setting up a music development office. And that was basically about, remember I said the foot in two camps? It was about recognising both the creative side of music and the business side, and looking at it through one lens rather than two. So it was about pulling those together. When I was probably about 17, I used to do songwriting, and so I remember I didn't know anything about the local music industry. I loved music, obviously. So I remember joining what is called SCALA. It's a Songwriters, Composers and Lyricists Association. And so I used to go on my own, because none of my friends were interested. I used to go on my own to these meetings, and I'd meet music industry people. So I started to learn what the industry looked like and what it felt like with artists and industry people. What's a manager? What's an agent? What's a record label? So I started to learn little bits about that then. And so fast forward, when I then went into artist management, and then I used to go to lots of conferences. I used to take myself to conferences all around the country, and that gives you an understanding, and I built a deeper understanding about how the music industry worked. And then I could sort of see what was happening in our local industry in comparison to what was happening around other parts of the country. And South Australia in the 80s had a really, and before that obviously, had a really strong industry here. Lots of great artists, and continued, I have to say, after that as well, to come out of Adelaide. But there was a point, and everyone remembers fondly the 80s, because there was what was called a pub rock scene. And it was artists used to get paid quite well, but lots of people used to pay tickets to go to shows on the weekends, and also not just in the city. There was iconic live music venues around. So it had this healthy ecosystem where artists and audiences and the industry was going really well. A few key things happened in the 90s that changed that, and so poker machines were allowed to come into those venues that hosted music, and it was a good way for those businesses to earn money. So as they're in their own business choices, they chose to take poker machines, and that changed the way live music would happen. And so, without going into that too deeply, it's changed the music industry, the live sector here. And if you haven't got a live music industry where local artists can develop music, develop audiences, test their music songs, products essentially, you don't have an industry around them. So what would happen is the less places to play, the less artists creating, all of those industry people gravitated across to the East Coast. So where there's more people, more venues, more live music. So all the industry kind of gravitated onto the East Coast. And so it became a little bit disparate and a little bit quiet here in the industry in the 90s.
What does live music mean to you, Becc?
Live music is so many things. It could be a complete release, just to go and dance like a crazy person, and sing really loudly in the crowd of lots of people where nobody can hear. It can be uniting, where you're part of a group of people enjoying the same thing all at the same time, and you feel connected to that artist and the magic of that. So it can be quite transformative, especially I think as a teenager. Live music bonds you with your friends, but those songs become almost the anthems and the soundtrack to your life. And I heard somebody say there has been a study done, and the music that you listen to a lot when you're around 14 tends to be the music that sticks with you through the rest of your life.
The South Australian Music Hall of Fame is great for future musicians to learn and be mentored from the past so they can move forward with solidarity. How are you finding acceptance levels with visitors and residents of St Paul's?
Visitors to the centre often really like looking through the Hall of Fame. It's a real celebration of some of the achievements of the artists that came from South Australia, some dating way back and some more recent. I think it's really nice to acknowledge, the achievements of artists, I think, and having that, to walk through and remember takes people back.
Can you tell us about some of the facilities that are provided for young, emerging creatives in South Australia?
There's some really great facilities in South Australia to support young creatives. There's the Carclew building in North Adelaide, and Carclew, they provide lots of programs and activities for young people. So I think from very young, primary school age, right through to 26 years old. So lots of people go in and out of Carclew through their life and do many different things and programs. They do things right up through to creative entrepreneurship as well. They also work in some school programs with music, and they also blend, like they take music industry professionals or other, not only just music, but other arts professionals in with students, and they try to mentor and to encourage skills through those channels as well. So Carclew's a magical place. Besides, it looks like a castle. If you haven't been there before, you really have to go. It's lovely. And they sometimes have events on the grounds there, and it's really, really nice. The other one that's a fascinating place, and we've supported through the programs through the state government, is the Northern Sound System out at Elizabeth. That's an amazing place too. So there's a skate track out the front, which is really cool, and then in an old basketball stadium they've got it converted into, there's a live music venue there, and there's studios there, and it's places that don't cost a lot of money for people to go in and try things out. And they'll do special nights, so you can go and girls can just go in and learn, or you can just go in and learn with the rappers or with the pop singers. So they have really like special programs so everyone can find their people, if you like, and things you're interested in, and be comfortable in there. The Northern Sound System is super cool. Actually, they had royals go there once, and they did like the zzz, on the vinyl. So you should definitely go to the Northern Sound System too. That's a lot of fun.
I will. Becc, you must be proud to drive these initiatives and have such a powerful effect, enabling young people to follow their dreams in creative industries.
I feel blessed to have the job that I have. Being able to influence or encourage, programs and support that's changing people's lives is an honour. Sometimes work gets hard, as it does for everybody. The best antidote for that is to go out and see some art, dance, listen to music, look at some visual art, buy some earrings from a local artist. It's about going and immersing yourself in creativity, and that just re-energises you. It's good for your soul, and then you come back and everything has a purpose. Do you know there was a moment in time where I had to make a decision about me working in the industry. I had a little business and I used to manage a band. That was what drove me. I was passionate about that. I was working part-time in the government and managing bands. So I used to work all day, and then I'd come home and then I'd work into the evening as well. But then when I had the opportunity put to me that maybe I could consider going full-time in the government, and I remember feeling like, how will I ever be able to let go of working directly with the artists that I've been working with. And my partner said to me, well, you've been working to help, you know, one band in particular and then a small number of artists. Imagine if you had the opportunity to help so many others. And that was it. That was actually the advice that enabled me to make the decision.
Becc, who are some of the success stories that have benefited from these facilities?
Some of the people that you may know of or your friends may be able to research on the internet that have gone as kids through Carclew, for instance, would be somebody like Tilda Cobham Harvey. So she's in movies now. She was playing Helen Reddy in I Am Woman recently, and she was back here in Adelaide for the film festival, which was super exciting. And she comes from a creative family because her dad is a really well-respected and talented lighting designer, and her mum, I believe, is a dancer. And so they came from a creative family, and so they would have encouraged her to participate in Carclew. And so she's one really good news story that came from Carclew. Another artist I can think of is a musician. It's a woman called TK Meidzer, and TK actually did some music courses through Music SA here at St Paul's. Actually, it was probably before here. And then she also used to go and do workshops and engage with the Northern Sound System. And so TK followed that path of development, and then she was a part of our fellowship program as well. Just this week, I saw on her Instagram that she's on a billboard in Times Square. That's pretty massive, right? So she's doing really well. I thought of another person that's come through Carclew in the theatre world, and it's Finnegan Krugemeyer. And he, I remember, was a young playwright who's done some amazing work, so you should definitely look him up too.
Is South Australia the place to be for budding creatives at this time?
Definitely. I had an artist say to me in a conversation who'd travelled the world, he said, you know, South Australia is it's kind of like being in Los Angeles instead of New York. So what he meant by that is it's easier to get around, but it's easier to create. So you've got the space to create. And when you're young and you leave home and you don't have a lot of money, it's hard to be a creative in a town where you've got to work 4 jobs to pay the rent and then try and be creative. So I think we're really lucky in Adelaide. Even the layout, you know, we're nestled between easy access to the hills and the ocean, the open space. We also have, I think, really good support mechanisms to help young creatives. There are many inspirational creatives from South Australia and still here that are often really, really willing to lend advice. They participate in mentoring programs as well to support young. And so it's like that, you know, they go through their own career and then they can give back. And those people are around a lot in Adelaide. I think we're really lucky with that.
My advice is to just do it. If you're passionate about something, just go and do it. The only thing that's stopping you is you.
Have all the challenges that you have faced thus far in following your dreams been worthwhile?
Absolutely. I think they've been sometimes more important than the successes, the challenges.
If there's any kid who worries about whether or not they're allowed to write, whether what they're writing is good enough, it just is for anybody who puts pen to paper or a finger to a keyboard. They have the permission to. They're going to create something wonderful.
What advice would you offer to young people aspiring to becoming part of the creative industries?
Follow your passion and stretch yourself out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to be a little bit weird. You got to test some things and challenge some things. Use your creative voice. Do your research and see what's available. There are many different things for emerging screen makers and visual artists and dancers and all sorts of creative endeavours. There's support locally. So I think it's about asking lots of questions, and then most importantly, go and see lots of local art of all types, because if you're creative, quite often you want to try many different things and find your niche and where you fit comfortably and where you really excel. But I think it's about being inspired and going to see and participate in lots of art and activity I think that's inspiring. That drives people, I think. Do you know the really good thing about creativity is it gives lots of people a purpose. So you might have some kids that may not like going to school all the time. Maybe their school doesn't do enough creative things to get them engaged. And some schools do that really well. They have creative programs that keep kids engaged, but then there are some kids that just don't like going to school. And that's why the Northern Sound System, and there are other places like that do this too, but the Northern Sound System is great. And there's a guy there called Nick who's like a magician with kids. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, but he will go hang out in the skate track out the front, and there might be some kids hanging around there that probably should be at school, but he'll go and hang out with them and encourage them to come into the Northern Sound System. And then he'll show them what a studio looks like, and he'll show them how easy it is to use, you know, the desk. And then maybe you want to try a bit of hip hop and tell your story through song and through rhyme. And these kids, all of a sudden, it's like they wake up inside. They've found a purpose. They can tell their stories. They can express themselves through music and art form. And I think it's being able to express yourself creatively that again goes back to what we were talking about before, build your character and your values. I think it's inspiring.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today and sharing your inspirational journey thus far. It has been a pleasure meeting you,
It's
Becc.
been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Isabella. Oh wow, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Did you do that?
Yes.
You're so clever. This looks amazing. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. I feel like the luckiest girl on earth.